Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Kawneer 050322-29. This is a top pivot. It's a top pivot only. This would be what is called an offset pivot. There are two types of pivots. There are those that are offset and center hung. It has everything to do with where the vertical axis of pivoting is. In an offset pivot, that dimension is at some distance from the edge of the door or the jamb over. It's usually very close to 3/4 inch, but the offset is measured from the face of the door to that vertical axis of pivoting, which is 3/4 inch for this pivot. They also make 1.5 offset. It's the same concept. Face of the door to that center line is 1.5. You might use a greater offset when you are perhaps wanting to emulate a wide throw style hinge, or because you're getting around maybe some trim or some casing. I've also used them when I need to move. I'm going to use it as a 3/4 inch pivot, but I've got a thicker than average door, like maybe a 2 1/4 or a 2 3/4, whatever it might be. I want to move that arm in a little bit better. Now they do make pivots that are based on the door thickness, but I'll use an 1.5 occasionally for that application as well. And I'm thinking, I had an application where we used an 1.5 offset to move that vertical axis of pivoting out further. A radiused top door that is in a radiused frame, obviously, set in a wall. But then, above that application, that doorway was set into, start over, here's the wall, the plane of the wall. That door was set in a couple of inches into that wall, 6 inches maybe, whatever it was, radiused. So that door is actually set into that wall. With a standard butt, the client realized, oh, I can only get to 75 degrees opening before the arch of the top of the door would hit the wall because it was inset. And we needed to go with a wide throw type of concept. I was able to put that relatively quickly into AutoCAD and realize, here's the dimension that we need. And it turned out that an 1.5 offset pivot gave us the amount of additional clearance because of relocating that vertical axis of pivoting out further to get the door to go, past 90. It would only go to whatever the degree was, but it worked perfectly for the client. Not unusual, actually, to see those types of applications are in churches where they have arched wall features, and inside of there are doors that are inset. And those doors, they go to a certain degree, and that's all they can go. Otherwise, that top of that door is going to hit the top, the header of that wall construction. So just kind of a fork in the road to talk about offsets. Now, center hung means that the vertical axis of pivoting is down in the center of the thickness of the door, usually exactly in the center of the thickness. I'm not aware of a center hung that's not. The dimension from the edge of the door over or the jamb over, there's no hard and fast rule about that, even though every center hung pivot template will give that to you. But if you're building a 60-inch wide door, yes, people do that, you might say, yeah, I'm going to kick that vertical axis of pivoting over 18-inch. And sure, that happens. Well, this Kawneer top pivot is not that exotic. This is a very typical run-of-the-mill piece of equipment. And this video is to simply serve as visual evidence of the item. If you have a Kawneer door, this is quite likely going to be the top pivot if you're replacing it. It's certainly not uncommon to replace the top pivots, and it's certainly not uncommon to replace the bottom pivots because, they're doing all the work. The top pivot's doing all the work of holding the door up in place naturally, right? The bottom pivot's doing most of the work, but this is keeping the door in shear. And these do wear out. It's a bit striking to me how inexpensive this hardware is, how, frankly, low quality it is, given the application. Where do you want to put the cheapest hinges? On the doors that get most use? Well, that's what happens. That's why replacing these is not uncommon. This is the Kawneer item. I believe this is superior to the knockoff versions that I have seen many times in the past. This is very likely a piece of, this spindle is likely stainless. It looks like it's stainless. It will also allow you to lock it in place. There's a little roll pin inserted there that allows you to get in there and kind of pull it down. You may be able to access that when it's installed from the inside of the top of the door. you're going to need to access that, because pushing that down is how you service the door. Okay, that's how you're going to retract that pin and then tip the door out, and that's how it'll come out. Dimensional properties. Overall height of the body, about 1 7/8 inches or so. You can see that it's tapered. At the top, it's pretty close to about 1.5 inches. At the bottom, it's going to be closer to about 1 5/16 inches. Top of the unit to the center line of the first hole, about 5/16 inches, and then the bottom about 1 1/8 inches. It appears to be centered. Now, the header component is right here. That's going to have a bronze bushing inside of it, and that's known as a self-lubricating piece of material. Very common to be used in applications where metal touches metal. A latch bolt, the face of a latch bolt, if you ever study that, it will look almost oily. That's self-lubricating metal, and that's why they use bronze, because it's naturally a lower friction coefficient. It's just simply the bottom line, so that's why they're going to use that. Basic dimensional properties: overall depth, about 2 3/4. The width up here, about 1 3/8 inches. I would say from the shoulder here to that first hole, looks like it's about 1/4 inch. Then the second two, about 1 1/8 inches. Likely centered, about 5/8 to that first hole, and then the top two, or the two, about 5/16, maybe 1/4 inch down to about 7/8. This is going to include a mounting plate that you will use to hold this onto the door itself. It will include the two hex head machine bolts that are obviously going to go here. Okay, probably just better to attach these, because then the loose bolts aren't scratching the finish. It's amazing how many manufacturers don't think of that. 3 flathead machines. Flathead, I don't know the thread type. They kind of look like they might be 1/4 20. We'll just thread those into place. That's how that's going to look. And when you open the door and look up to the header, all you're going to see are just the heads of these 3 screws. You won't see anything else. There'll be a slot cut in the face of the header for this hardware to slide in. I would say that it's least common to replace the top pivot only, but that is the case. We do replace the top pivot only. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a look at the supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, here is the item that we are indeed looking at. Not a whole lot to see here from this line art drawing, but I do have some photographs here that we can take a little closer look at. There's the packaging. There's everything in the packaging. And the purpose of this video, to a certain extent, is to just take visual and dimensional evidence of the item as well, so that you can say, yep, that's what I need. That's the one right there. Now, let's take a look at the extended description. Application: the frame portion is mortised into the header transom bar and is attached with screws threaded to the pivot block. The pivot attachment location takes advantage of the strength of at the frame joint. I would say that mechanically fastening 2 pieces of aluminum that have been cut is not as strong, but nonetheless. The door portion has 2 bosses which interlock in the bottom extrusion. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're going for with that. Well, it could be. What they're saying is that the spindle doesn't rotate at all. That does not turn, that's for sure. Secured in place with 2 screws through a reinforcing plate which spreads the load. The spring-loaded pivot pin allows easy one-man installation. Standard finish is a thermo-setting polyester powder-coated finish applied to match the anodized finish of black. So this is the -29, that means black. -17 means a sprayed aluminum, and -40 means dark bronze. So if you change that number, you'll get different colors. This includes the top, pivot, door, and frame portion, the plate, and the screws. Finishes. Not everything here applies, but it does show you. 17 is clear, 29 is at the bottom, black, 40 is dark bronze. Then there's a link to the service parts catalog, and you can open up that catalog, but I'd like to show you on the link to the manufacturer's page here. And from this page is where you're going to be able to review not only all of the Kawneer items that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to their most current architectural hardware catalog, but several versions of the service parts catalog. We've got them going back to 2003. So let's look at the most current. Before we do that, let's copy our part number. Then let's open up that service parts catalog. And then do a find function on your keyboard for 050322, and you'll get right to the page where you can see it. What's nice about this is you can get right to the page where you see all of the pivot parts. You might say, well, you know, I really need the set. Okay, well, let's keep scrolling. Let's see. There we go. More pivots, intermediate pivots, hinges. Well, let's take a look. You need the set. So you've already got the top pivot package, which you can buy in the constituent components. And then you can get your door portion of the bottom pivot. You can get this bottom pivot plate, or you can get the jam mounted version. So possibly with this and with this, you get the top and bottom. They're not sold completely as sets. Some shims for the bottom as well. Intermediates. It's not unusual to see an intermediate pivot on these, of course, and they do kind of look like this. They can even do wire transfer versions as well if you have electric latch retraction on a Kawneer 1686, let's say. Okay. But this service parts manual, I show this to you because if you're servicing Kawneer doors, you're going to refer to this document. My regret is that this document isn't as detailed as I would like. There's no installation instructions. There's no templates. There's no dimensional drawings. But not all is lost because, in my experience, Kawneer has always provided me with exceptional customer service when it comes to, hey, what's the length of that bolt? They do a really good job with that stuff. So you might want to check out this service parts catalog. Now we're into the 17 and 1686 series devices. The panel line is going to be in here as well. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Now, black is admittedly less common than other finishes on this hardware. The Dash 40 and the Dash 17 will be more common. The Dash 40 nowadays, the dark bronze, is certainly more common than the 17. And they don't make everything that they do in black. They don't have, I don't think they have exit devices in black, although I may be incorrect on that. The name Kawneer is quite synonymous with aluminum storefront, and I'll tell you, there are a lot of people that produce aluminum storefront material. Kawneer has lots of competition. But where they really don't have competition, as I had said earlier, is in their exceptional support. Those folks over there every time give you the complete answer and provide data that other manufacturers wouldn't dream of providing you. You have a technical question on something, if they can answer it, they'll answer it from two different angles is what they'll do. So to them for that, I say thank you. Any questions on the 050322 or 29 finish, top pivot, or any other Kawneer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.